This hearing will come to order. As this hearing is fully virtual, we must address a few housekeeping matters. For today's meeting, the chair or staff designated by the chair may mute participants' microphones when they are not under recognition for the purposes of eliminating inadvertent background noise. Members are responsible for muting and unmuting themselves. If I notice that you have not unmuted yourself, I'll ask you if you would like the staff to unmute you. If you indicate approval by nodding, staff will unmute your microphone. I remind all members that you will have 5 minutes for your oral testimony, and we welcome you warmly. If there is a technology issue, we will move to the next member until the issue is resolved, and you will retain the balance of your time. You'll notice a clock on your screen that will show how much time is remaining. At 1 minute remaining, the clock will turn to yellow. At 30 seconds remaining, I will gently tap the gavel to remind members that your time is almost expired. And when your time has expired, the clock will turn red, and I'll begin to recognize the next member. In terms of the speaking order, we will follow the predetermined order that has been provided to your offices, beginning with the chair and ranking members' brief opening remarks. We will then turn to the members present at the time the hearing is called to order, who will be recognized according to the schedule, and move forward from there. Finally, House rules require me to remind you that we have set up an email address to which members can send anything they wish to submit in writing at any of our hearings or markups, and that email address has been provided in advance to your staff. I now recognize myself for up to 5 minutes for my opening statement, which will not take 5 minutes. The subcommittee will come to order as we begin our Member Day hearing. Thank you to all of our colleagues who will come before us today. We appreciate the time you've taken to be here today and your desire to serve your district and nation. The purpose of today's hearing is to take testimony from members on the fiscal year 2022 budget, and we look forward to hearing from our attendees about your priorities, including federal programs of importance to your districts. There are several who couldn't be here who have submitted testimony for the record. Today we will hear from our colleagues in 10-minute blocks with 2 members scheduled for each time block. Each member will have 5 minutes to testify, and with that I will turn to our esteemed ranking member, Mr. Simpson of Idaho, for his opening remarks.
Well, thank you, Chairwoman Capter. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. I don't really have an opening statement. I'm here to listen to our fellow colleagues about their priorities in the Energy and Water Appropriation Committee, and I think it's important that we hear from them in person. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here and listen to them. Mostly what I'm going to be doing today is listening more than asking questions. So thanks for putting this together. I look forward to working with all of our colleagues as we get into the 2022, I guess it is, appropriation cycle this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ranking Member Simpson. And now we would like to invite Representative Frank Mervyn from the greater Gary, Indiana region of the country, and then subsequent to his remarks, we will hear from Representative Kim Schreier from the state of Washington. We welcome both of you.
Good afternoon. I'd like to thank Chairwoman Capter and Ranking Member Simpson for holding today's Member Day hearing. I appreciate the opportunity to engage with all members of this subcommittee and advocate for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers projects that are essential to strengthening the economy of Northwest Indiana, the entire Midwest, and our nation. I have the great honor and privilege of representing Indiana's 1st Congressional District, following in the footsteps of my mentor and friend, Chairman Pete Visklowski. Our district is at the center of vital road, rail, air, and port networks and home to major manufacturing industries. This infrastructure, coupled with our incredible workforce and adjacency to the great city of Chicago, enables our region to continue to attract new businesses and talent. Northwest Indiana is proud to have the largest concentration of steel production and the largest inland oil refinery in our country. These industries foster economic activity and provide good-paying union jobs to thousands of workers in my district. From maintaining the federal navigation depths of our commercial harbors to ensuring Northwest Indiana residents have clean drinking water, the Chicago District of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is a true hero and unparalleled long-standing partner when it comes to facilitating economic development and promoting environmental stewardship in Northwest Indiana. Chairman Visklowski would often state that the U.S. Corps of Engineers projects serve as an economic driver in Indiana's 1st Congressional District, and I agree wholeheartedly. I appreciate that community project funding is an important step in reasserting the constitutional prerogatives of the legislative branch, and I fully understand the importance of the subcommittee to thoughtfully scrutinize member requests. I believe it is critical that we exercise our constitutional authority to direct funding to our districts, and it is incumbent for us to submit scrutinized project requests that are beyond reproach and focused on the criteria set forth in this subcommittee. For the 1st District of Indiana, I would note in the interest of time that the subcommittee has my written testimony and additional community supporting material. And should you need any other information of material, please do not hesitate to let me know. But in short, I have asked this subcommittee to appropriate community project funding to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers construction account for the specific purpose of undertaking environmental infrastructure projects in the Calumet region, funding to complete the Corps' construction activities of the confined disposal facility and assist the Indiana Harbor, and funding for the Corps' operation and maintenance activities in Burns Waterway Harbor. In closing, I would like to again take a moment to recognize my predecessor, Chairman Pete Visklowski, who served on this subcommittee with distinction for many years. Mr. Visklowski showed myself and Northwest Indiana the incredible value of the House Appropriations Committee and what responsible federal investments can do to transform local communities. Chairwoman Chapter, Ranking Member Simpson, and all members of this subcommittee, I look forward to building on Congressman Visklowski's most positive legacy and developing a strong relationship with all of you so that we may work in a collaborative and productive manner to deliver for Northwest Indiana and all the American people. I thank you once again for the opportunity to testify today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your respect of the time limit as well. Congresswoman Schreier.
Thank you, Chairwoman Chapter and Ranking Member Simpson, for allowing me this opportunity to testify today about my priorities as representative of Washington's 8th Congressional District. The 8th District is vast, stretching from the suburbs of Seattle in the west, over the hayfields of Kittitas County, and onto the sun-drenched banks of the Columbia River in the east. Washington State is the nation's largest producer of hydroelectric power, and much of that is generated by publicly owned utilities in my district. But water doesn't just power our cities. Water flowing through an innovative network of reservoirs and canals has allowed abundant orchards and our grain fields to flourish in the dry central Washington climate, and the food grown here feeds the world and supports rural communities at home. So today I ask the committee to support programs that help my constituents make use of water in efficient, environmentally sound, and productive ways. So I'm submitting a longer letter to address all of these priorities in some detail, but I'd like to highlight just a few for you today. First, I urge the committee to continue its support for the Yakima Basin Integrated Plan. This plan was developed by state, local, and tribal authorities, as well as irrigators and environmental advocates. And the goal is ambitious: to provide enough water for fish, farmers, and the Yakima Basin communities to thrive well into the future in the face of a changing climate. The first phase of the plan, built on the Bureau of Reclamation's Yakima River Basin Water Enhancement Program, was authorized by Congress in 2019. The state of Washington has spent $244 million since 2013 on projects related to the plan. The state and the Yakima River Basin water users contribute a minimum 50% of the overall cost to implement the plan. So more federal investment is needed to balance this local commitment. We do not yet know the President's budget request for the Yakima River Basin Water Enhancement Project and whether critical priority projects are included in that request, but it is my hope that this committee will work with the President and local stakeholders to ensure these efforts are fully funded. I also ask this committee to support full funding for two important hydropower incentive programs within the U.S. Department of Energy's Water Power Technologies Office. and established through the Energy Policy Act of 2005. Section 242 created a hydropower production incentive program to spur new development on existing infrastructure. For example, adding power generation to already existing non-powered dams and conduits. I urge the committee to provide $10 million in annual appropriations for the purposes of Section 242. Section 243 of the Energy Policy Act of 2005 created a program to encourage efficiency improvements at existing hydropower facilities by providing incentive payments of up to 10% of the cost of capital improvement, up to $750,000 for a single facility. The public utility districts in Washington State are constantly working to improve productivity and efficiency, and I've heard from them about how much the Section 243 program would help them continue those efforts. However, despite being reauthorized on a bipartisan basis last year as part of the Energy Act of 2020, the Section 243 program has never received appropriations. So I urge the committee to provide $10 million in annual appropriations for that section. I also ask your support for the Army Corps of Engineers Section 2106 program. This program will help maintain competitive ports in the Pacific Northwest by allowing harbor maintenance tax donor ports like Seattle and Tacoma to receive better return on the revenue that they generate. Section 2106 will allow shippers utilizing our ports to receive payments to help offset our HMT cost disadvantage and help them compete with Canadian harbors that directly target U.S.-bound cargo. Strong domestic ports are critical. Now, finally, I want to share my support for the Bureau of Reclamation Water Smart program, which improves water reliability for communities while increasing resilience to the impacts of climate change. Several projects in my district have made excellent use of Water Smart funds in recent years, and I would urge this committee to continue its commitment to fully funding the program. So thank you for your leadership during this process, and I yield back the 12 seconds of my time. Thank you. And you are muted. I will mute myself. Thank you.
And I'll claim those 12 seconds just to thank you, Congresswoman Schreier, and also Congressman Mervin. We couldn't have two different districts represented on this first panel, which makes our job so interesting. I'm sure Congressman Simpson agrees with that. But while I've got both of you, I wanted to just comment that for Congressman Mervin's district, the uniqueness of his harbor, being able to ship commodities through the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Seaway out toward the Atlantic and then down the inland waterway system to the Gulf is pretty amazing. So it's a very interesting part of the country. In terms of your efforts in the state of Washington, I'm jealous of the thinking that's gone in the state of Washington on hydropower. I'm trying to get anybody to think about hydropower in Ohio at the basin of the largest inland seas in the world, and it's very hard to get any attention to hydropower. So you have a lot to teach us in other parts of the country. But I wanted to ask each of you very quickly, what in terms of climate change have you seen in your area that might tell us that conditions are changing in the environment? Is there something unique that would be beneficial for the nation to understand? If any of you wish to comment, and then we'll move to the next set of witnesses.
I'll comment quickly that what we're seeing is less snowpack and heavier rains, which is making for an earlier growing season and a shorter growing season. And because we don't have snowpack, it means that really carefully using those water sources, water storage, and then water allocation through the rest of the year becomes more important. So projects then like the Yakima Basin Plan, which has reservoirs and systems to make sure that the water's there all year, become even more critical with this changing climate.
Thank you very much. I don't know if Congressman Mervin is still at a microphone. If not, Ranking Member Simpson, did you wish to comment or ask a question?
No, I just want to thank them for their testimony, and we'll certainly take these things under consideration as we try to develop this bill for the next year. But thank you for taking the time to be here and explain your priorities for us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We're now going to move on to our next set of witnesses. I'm told that Representative Sheila Jackson Lee of Texas is prepared to testify, and I am not quite sure who is the second panelist. I believe it's Representative H. Morgan Griffith as well. So if we could bring those witnesses forward. Thank you. Congresswoman Jackson Lee, the time is yours.
Thank you so very much, Madam Chairwoman, and to our ranking member Simpson and the distinguished members of the subcommittee. As a senior member of the Committee on Judiciary and on Homeland Security, let me offer my appreciation and thanks to Chairwoman Capter and Ranking Member Simpson for the difficult work and choices that must be made to produce a truly bipartisan energy and water spending bill, for their commitment to producing a bill that fairly reflects the interests and priorities of the American people. Count me as a teammate. Although I'm not on the committee, I have to offer to you, both of you and your subcommittee, heartfelt appreciation. When we were in the despair of Hurricane Harvey, your committee could not have been, Chairwoman Capter, you could not have been more thoughtful, more generous, more caring. When 51 trillion gallons of water came on our community. Interestingly enough, we just had rain just over the past weekend. It was not a hurricane. And we have streets and roads that are covered. We now have a whole segment near my congressional district, near Jacinto City, that are without water and are now on a boil water need. This is right here in the 21st century, right here in Houston, Texas, and the surrounding areas where families are suffering. So again, I will remain forever appreciative of your cooperation working with me to assure that the victims of Hurricane Harvey receive the assistance and resources needed to recover from one of the greatest water catastrophes in recent history. I look forward to working with you on some language dealing with making sure that those dollars are continuing to be funneled through to the local communities. I understand that my entire statement will be made a part of the record. I will keep my remarks brief, but I had to get my thank yous in. In a few minutes allotted to highlight the Energy, Water, and U.S. Army Corps of Engineer programs which warrant the committee's continuing attention and support, I'd like to acknowledge I support $1.59 billion for Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund. The Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund is so necessary. It's collected to ensure a reliable maintenance and operation of our nation's ports. I strongly support full utilization of the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund and urge the committee to fund harbor maintenance activities of the highest possible level. And I think I'll allow myself to say the Houston port, one of the largest tonnage ports, and maybe number one, is desperate in need of dredging because it is a man-made port. I support $275 million for weatherization assistance. WAP helps low-income families, seniors, veterans, and individuals with disabilities improve the energy efficiency of their homes, freeing up limited resources for other essentials like food and medicine. I support $6.0 million for U.S.-Israel energy cooperation, and that is to provide $6 million for implementation of the U.S.-Israel Energy Cooperative Agreement. This funding will be utilized to further implement Section 917 of the Energy Independence and Security Act and the May 2008 agreement between the U.S. and Israel on energy cooperation. The funding will provide for ongoing collaborative U.S. and Israeli research and development efforts in the fields of energy technologies and increased energy efficiency. I support $130 million for DOE's wind energy program. The wind energy program is very important to Texas, as many other states, improves our nation's renewable energy goals by furthering advancement in wind energy research and technologies, including wind energy project design, optimization, testing. The program also conducts important research to increase capacity for distributed wind and which has the ability to harness the full potential of rural America to play a major role to lower the cost for consumers. During our freeze here in the southern region in the early part of the year, wind did suffer, but it certainly was a major component in helping us to get wind. So we are very much in need, and we thank you. I support $2.7 billion for energy efficiency and renewable energy. The DOE Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy is critical programs to partner with the federal government on industry, academia, research, and our universities. I support $7.0 billion for DOE Office of Science. That is so crucial. The request funds activities that in close coordination with the NIH and the Presidential Brain Initiative will develop next generation tools and technologies. It also has the ability to interact with the Department of Education. For many of our schools, inner city schools do not have access to the important issues of science. This would be a very important program. I support $75 million for state energy programs. Funding will allow states to take on energy efficiency, renewable energy projects, and grid modernization projects. I can assure you that we have the importance of those projects here in Texas. Quickly, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, $185 million for the Army Corps of Engineers to continue their project. I support $80 million for continuing authorities funding for USACE Civil Works Program, which includes Emergency Steam Bank, Section 103 Hurricane and Storm Damage Reduction, $4 million, a number of other programs that I'll comment on if there are questions. And I support $5.7 million for U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Water Operation, $7.5 million for the Coastal and Ocean Data System. And concluding, I am eager to have considered my community project, which is the Port of Houston Army Corps Dredging and Sediment Study Project. We are most interested in making sure we make a dent there. And we are gratified for the committee's kind consideration and your knowledge of what goes on in Houston, Texas. You know it well, and the state of Texas and the rural areas, you know it very well. And we thank you so very much because you've been very, very helpful. Had to go through fast, but you have a lot of vital, important programs for the nation. We thank you so very much. With that, I yield and wait for questions. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Congresswoman, for your very thorough set of suggestions and proposals for our subcommittee to consider. I can't think of a community that has been hammered as much as Houston has, and we thank you for your leadership and keeping people positive and rebuilding with all of that you've had to endure there. We've been informed that we'll have to take a brief recess now because we're having technical issues. And we're going to just be briefly recessing for a second here. Let them address those and we'll be back very quickly. Sorry to do this. This hasn't happened before, but it's a new age. So give us a couple moments. Representative Griffith, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, very good. Sorry for that break there. They had to fix the live streaming. It wasn't working. So I think all is repaired now. And we welcome Representative Morgan Griffith from the great state of Virginia to testify this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ranking Member Simpson. I appreciate the opportunity to highlight matters of great importance to my district, the country, and I will argue to the rest of the world as well. As you all move forward in your appropriations process, I'd like to address the importance of research and development, R&D funding, at the Department of Energy in general, and specifically at the Office of Fossil Energy. I believe there needs to be research parity between renewable fuels and research on ways to better utilize fossil fuels. As we examine our global climate, it is imperative that any effective plan to counter climate change include our nation's vast supply of natural resources and our talent for technological innovation. China is anticipated to increase its emissions over the next decade and is currently the largest consumer of coal. This does not take into account the large number of coal-fired power plants China is financing in Africa and other countries with emerging economies. We know the rest of the world will continue to use fossil fuels for decades to come because for them, more energy means less poverty. In India, coal still accounts for nearly 3/4 of the country's annual power output. Though they have recently set a target to install renewable energy in the coming years, hundreds of thousands of rural Indians still do not have access to reliable, around-the-clock electricity in their homes. Their government will want to resolve that problem and will likely use coal in that effort. India will use renewables. But to lift the poorest citizens out of the 19th century conditions, they must use coal. Many other countries are in the same situation. They can use mid-20th century coal burning technology, or they can use 21st century American cleaner coal burning technology. Accordingly, I believe a role for American ingenuity is to produce and export better, cleaner, more efficient technology for the world. The Northern Hemisphere shares its air. While cleaning up the air in the United States is helpful in order to stop climate change and eliminate environmental hazards, we must also work to clean the air in coal-rich Kazakhstan and in the Uttar Pradesh state in northern India. The Department of Energy plays an important role in this R&D, but it can do more for exploration and innovation in the energy space with the right support. I'd like to highlight a team of experts at Virginia Tech who are developing a process to extract rare earth elements from coal byproducts. A consortium of universities, including Virginia Tech, has won grants from DOE to test a hydroprobic, hydrophilic separation process to produce clean coal and specialty carbon products from discarded coal waste. As a result of this research, they have found ways to improve the quality of coal burned at steel plants. They are licensing this technology to steel mills in India, which will reduce the mill's carbon footprint. This serves as just an example of how DOE R&D funding can be used in conjunction with our national labs and research universities to get projects like this off the ground. Another example I'd like to share today involves innovative small business in Pulaski, Virginia. MOVA Technologies has developed filtration bed equipment to remove pollutants from flue gas streams and recycle them for other uses. The technology can be applied to a number of industries, including energy generation, cargo ships, manufacturing processes, livestock, farm air control systems, or direct carbon capture. This type of creative thinking and design will help us solve the environmental and economic challenges we and the world face. I'm not advocating to reduce research for renewable fuels. I think that's important well. And while I'm advocating, and what I am advocating is there should be parity between the two types of energy, the fossil fuels and the renewables, particularly with the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. Last year, hearing testimony in the Select Committee on climate, both Democratic and Republican witnesses thought research parity was desirable. A comprehensive, all-of-the-above energy policy must include robust funding for research and development at the federal level. These funds will continue to shorten the timeline to ready many clean energy technologies for commercial use, both here and abroad. I appreciate your consideration of this request, and I look forward to answering any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Congressman Griffith. And we've heard you loud and clear. We know research is our friend, and it's too bad research didn't keep up with reality in the past, though we have plussed up that budget consistently. And so thank you for reminding our subcommittee. I wanted to ask both you and Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee what I asked the earlier witnesses today, and that is in terms of the changing environment. I'm sitting in a very wet Ohio right now, and our Great Lakes are at an all-time high, obviously with what has happened in Houston consistently, but I'm not sure about Virginia. I know more about coastal Virginia compared to interior Virginia. If you have noted changes that are of significance impacting energy and water systems that you have to contain and manage in your respective states, could you just briefly give us a little bird's eye view of your regions and climate change? Congresswoman Jackson Lee.
Madam Chair, thank you for the opportunity. It's good to be here with my colleague as well. I think we both show a great enthusiasm for this appropriations subcommittee. First, I'd like to say that the eagerness and the attentiveness to the idea of climate change, I have seen a rising interest even beyond governmental entities, research institutions, really in day-to-day people. They are very cognizant. We live not only coastal, I'm 50 miles in from the Gulf, and any moment I can be overrun by the Gulf in terms of, that's what the combination was, Hurricane Harvey. We were sort of squeezed in between the waters rising in the Gulf, and the actual 51 trillion that we actually hit us with. But we have bayous, and our bayous are very susceptible with the rising tide concept, because waters run through Houston, literally run through our neighborhoods, and we've had to create bayous to contain those waters. And so whenever we have this climate circumstance, we can have rain that creates rising waters, and in what I call naked bayous, meaning that they're not sufficiently restored or sufficiently girded. They don't have the monies from the Army Corps of Engineers, and we create a very disastrous set of circumstances. We have experienced in our community or in our area droughts where we've had a long period of time of great heat. That was like 2 summers ago. Great heat, and of course, little water. And that's very strange to those of us here. And then, of course, we had a phenomenon that happened. We're still speechless, and that was the freeze. There's nothing that we can even comprehend in this region on the freeze. We had at least 20 plus people die in their bed, including 11-year-old. We were on boil water for weeks. We had broken pipes that were extensive because in construction, our pipes are not placed underground. Those broken pipes destroyed homes, and particularly those in low income. So we have seen, and the temperature at that time was single digit, and for single digit in Houston or in the region, it kills. And then we were able to see the fright of not having a grid that could confront these tragedies. The answer was a little long, but I wanted you to see that we are warm country people. So any disruption in that and any spiking of that, which we've seen over the last couple of years, does generate concern. But I'll conclude by saying, as I started, the interest in working on climate change responsibly has exponentially grown. And our mayor, Mayor Sylvester Turner, is now chair of the U.S. Conference of Mayors Subcommittee on Climate. This is a Texas mayor in an energy focused community that focused for very long years on fossil fuel. We're opening our eyes to renewables and wind and many others that we can work with in order to meet this new day of climate change.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman Jackson Lee. I think these statements, members, are extremely important to our record and to the American people. Thank you for walking us through that history over the last few years. It really is dramatic. Thank you for your strength. Congressman Griffin, would you wish to reply to that in any way?
Yes, ma'am. I mean, she obviously, in great respect for Congresswoman Jackson Lee, she obviously has a very different district than mine, but they're both related to fossil fuel industries. And it's one of the reasons why I think we have to work on climate change by working on research and development, as I said in my statement, because we're not going to get rid of the fossil fuels as much as some may wish for that in the near future. To go to a total renewable system, as one of the witnesses, Ms. Silverstein, said in front of Energy and Commerce a few weeks back, we have to build a lot of high-powered electric lines across the country in order to carry the electricity from these new sources of energy, whether it be wind, solar, or other renewables. That's going to take, her estimate, I gave her a number of, would it be more than 20 to 30 years? She said yes. So we have to keep that in mind. And when we look at the rest of the world, obviously other parts of the world are not ready to go in that direction anywhere near as much as we are. So that's why I'm a big believer that we must do more research. And I thank you for that opportunity to say that yet again. And I don't think that's in disagreement with what Congresswoman Jackson Lee was saying. It's just maybe a slightly different look at it, but it's the same idea. Now, I will tell you in my district, and I've had one of those rare opportunities that come around sometimes in life. I've lived in the same community for more than 60 years. And during that time, we've had some warmer winters than others. I would say on general rule over the last 10 or 15 years, it's a little bit warmer. Being in the mountains of Virginia, not the coastal area, but in the mountains of Virginia, we've always been subject to flooding. And, it's in my high school yearbooks when there were big floods. And we still have some flooding, but I don't see any really large increase in that amount of flooding. It's just that we have it. It depends on the year. It depends on the part of my district, because it's a district the size of the state of New Jersey, a little bit bigger. And so sometimes we'll get flooding in one part and not in other parts of the district. I would say that my sense is that our spring migration of birds, I'm a birder, and so I pay attention to those things, seems to come a little bit earlier. So we're seeing some effects, but nothing nearly to the catastrophic level that Texas has seen, or some of our lower areas and some of our warmer areas have seen already. And so we'll have to try to figure out how we manage those changes in the environment, at the same time trying to reduce our carbon footprint by all means necessary.
Thank you very much. What excellent witnesses. Congressman Simpson, do you have any questions?
Nope, no questions. Thank the witnesses for testifying.
I reiterate that. Thank you both very, very much. We'll now move on to Congresswoman Jennifer.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you both. I would now like to there. Okay, I think we can be heard. I have Congressman Greg Stanton on the witness list, and also Congresswoman Jennifer Gonzalez-Colon as our next witnesses. Congressman Stanton is from the great state of Arizona, and Congresswoman Gonzalez-Colon is from Puerto Rico.
Thank you very much, Chairwoman Chapter, and also Ranking Member Simpson and members of the subcommittee. And I want to say thank you for the opportunity to testify on the importance of federal investments to meet Arizona's water resource needs. Arizona has long been a leader when it comes to effectively managing water supplies. It's how we've managed to flourish in a desert climate for so long. Climate change, though, presents us with many challenges: rising temperatures and less predictable rain cycles. These changes have left the Southwest in a prolonged drought. Extreme heat wears on our infrastructure and alters our watersheds. And heavy, intense rains combined with dry, hard ground make our urban areas more prone to flash floods. The kind of infrastructure we need to adopt requires federal investment. And I've worked with community leaders from small, rural, and tribal communities, as well as our major metropolitan areas, to identify Arizona's priority projects to prepare us for the challenges ahead. These projects address our environmental infrastructure needs, flood protection, and water supply preservation. Arizona will have more than $15 billion in drinking water and wastewater infrastructure needs over the next 2 decades. To begin to address these needs and the fiscal constraints for our communities to make these investments, the 2020 Water Resources Development Act included my legislation to add Arizona to the Section 595 Environmental Infrastructure Program. Earlier this year, the first project was funded, and many communities across our state are eager to participate in the program. I urge this subcommittee to provide strong funding for the Environmental Infrastructure Program. Although Arizona is a desert state, it is no stranger to flooding, and there are several projects in need of investment. The first project is Tres Rios, an ecosystem restoration effort along the Salt and Gila River corridors in Phoenix. This project is partially complete. However, construction has been halted since it reached its 902 limit. As a result, funds are needed for a post-authorization change report. Completing Tres Rios would improve flow conveyance and support native riparian habitat, remove invasive species like the salt cedar, and improve wildlife habitat. Second, the Cave Buttes Dam in Maricopa County provides flood protection for more than 1 million residents and $15 billion in residential and commercial property. Unfortunately, seepage in the dam has sounded the alarm for us to reduce its risk of failure. Similarly, thousands of residents and hundreds of critical facilities, including Luke Air Force Base, depend on the Agua Fria River Trilby Wash or McMicken Dam for flood protection. But because of dam safety deficiencies, land subsidence, earth fissuring, and urbanization, Its level of protection is questionable at best. We must begin new feasibility studies for both Cave Buttes Dam and McMicken Dam to allow the Corps to evaluate flood risk management needs and safety modifications. Third, I urge this subcommittee to provide new construction starts so projects like the Little Colorado River at Winslow can proceed. This project would protect the city of Winslow and part of Navajo County, including the community's critical public facilities. And fourth, I request increased funding for Section 205 and 206 under the Continuing Authorities Program, which is currently overextended and underfunded. Arizona has at least 4 projects seeking to utilize this program. To secure Arizona's water future, we must respond to the ongoing drought in the Colorado River Basin. The 2019 Drought Contingency Plan directs the Interior Secretary to create or conserve 100,000 acre-feet per year. I urge the subcommittee to provide the Bureau the resources necessary to fulfill this critical commitment. Finally, we need to ensure the continued reliability of the water provided by the Salt River Project to the Phoenix metropolitan area. Colorado River shortages exacerbate the need for central Arizona to have reliable alternative surface water supplies. Unfortunately, natural sediment accumulation in the Verde River Basin has impacted the water storage capacity of the Horseshoe Reservoir, one of the federally owned reservoirs of the Salt River Project. The Bureau of Reclamation is conducting an appraisal study to evaluate options to restore storage capacity, and I urge the subcommittee to include funding for the next phase of this critical effort. Thank you so much for the opportunity and for your support of our nation's water infrastructure.
Thank you, Congressman Stanton, for excellent testimony. We want to hear a little more about Arizona in a second. And thank you for your recommendations. And now, Congresswoman Gonzalez Colon.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman Chapter and Ranking Member Simpson for hosting these opportunities for members and allowing me the opportunity to testify from Puerto Rico. While I have multiple requests submitted for your consideration as you prepare the Energy and Water Development Appropriations Bill for the next fiscal year, I will just focus my remarks on my request in support of the Caño Martin Pena Channel Ecosystem Restoration Project. As you may know, the eastern half of the Martin Pena Channel in San Juan is currently clogged with sediments, debris, trash, and water polluted with human waste. In 2017, the hurricane season exacerbated the poor environmental conditions and persistent flooding that are still experienced today. The detrimental conditions of the channel has been present for decades, currently challenging the health and well-being of approximately 26,000 residents across 8 communities, economic development of the area, and critical infrastructure, like the Luis Muñoz Marin International Airport, which is our main venue for people coming in and out. The Caño Martin Pena Channel was authorized by Section 5127 of the 2007 Water Resources Development Act, and since then, the government of Puerto Rico, which is the non-federal sponsor, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers have collaborated to develop this project throughout different phases leading to construction. However, construction has not commenced, and neither has the dredging efforts that will provide relief and safety to the communities and reestablish actually the natural tide exchange between the San Jose Lagoon and the San Juan Bay, 2 bodies of water that are of great significance for native species and the ecosystem function. The construction phase must start to restore the channel and its surrounding habitat and improve the current conditions that affect my constituents. This is why I have selected the Caño Martin Pena project as my first request for community project funding for fiscal year 2022. Specifically, my request consists of $32 million in construction funds to initiate the construction phase, which is divided in 3 distinct contracts. If you look at the second slide on the screen, the first construction contract is highlighted in red. Receiving funding for construction will allow the Corps of Engineers to work with the non-federal sponsor, Enlace, to initiate the work on the first contract, which prepare main disposal sites and including dredging of the San Jose Lagoon up to the Barbosa Bridge, which will excavate more than 140,000 cubic yards of material. This contract is shovel-ready, and the non-federal sponsor has already met their real estate requirements. I think the communities at the channel are ready to see some real progress in what is one of the most densely populated areas on the island. And I do believe that Congress has a remarkable opportunity to support its project throughout the community project funding process level for the next fiscal year. I respectfully request you fully consider this request and the benefits it will bring to our ecosystems, our communities, our flood mitigation and preparedness capabilities on the island, and of course, the health of these residents who have been waiting for a long time. So having said that, thank you, all of you, and I yield back.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman Colon. And I wanted to ask both you and Congressman Stanton what I've asked every other witness this morning. As we look at what's happening environmentally across our world, some places have felt the brunt of change more greatly than others. As you look at Puerto Rico and Arizona, these are two places that have really reeled from the environment being a little inclement at times. So in Puerto Rico, I was just stunned at the devastation that the oceans can yield. And in Arizona, I read where last year your people endured in the state 100 days over 100 degrees. That is really, that would be hard. And I wanted to get your comments about how you've seen your region change relative to climate and some of the challenges you face now compared to prior decades.
Okay, I can jump in first, Chairwoman, if that's okay.
Fine.
Okay, so Chairman, look, so much of climate change is discussed on the issue of rising water levels on the coastal areas, but I would argue that climate change has been as devastating in Arizona as anywhere else. And there are three major areas of devastating impact in Arizona as a result of climate change. Extreme heat. The temperature is going up dramatically, and the issue of the livability of our community, if that extreme heat continues, is really questionable. And sadly, we see many people, many residents dying as a result of this extreme heat. So extreme heat, record number of 100 plus days, et cetera, is a huge impact directly related to climate change. Second, drought. We are now 20 years into drought conditions in the state of Arizona. The Colorado River, which provides water for not only Maricopa County, but also Southern California. Tens of millions of people rely on the Colorado River. We had to declare shortage on the river for the first time ever. And people are now talking about, if we don't take strong action, the possible collapse of the Colorado River as a water source for millions and millions of people. So the drought conditions in Arizona are a direct result of climate change. And the increase in number of forest fires. Each year we see almost a new record in the number of forest fires in Arizona and elsewhere in the western part of the United States. Again, a direct result of climate change. So I would politely argue that the impact of climate change is as devastating on the people of Arizona as anywhere else in America.
Thank you, Congressman. I had read where for several days, airplanes could not take off in Arizona. They were grounded because of the very high temperatures last year. Is my understanding correct?
Yes and no. It has to do, and I'm not an expert on this, but it has to do with the weight of the airplane. So certain airplanes at certain weight levels weren't able to take off, but it didn't completely shut down our airports. But yes, the extreme heat does have a impact on the ability to provide aviation services, which obviously has a massive impact on our local economy.
Thank you very much. Congresswoman Gonzalez-Colon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will tell you this. You know, I've been living in Puerto Rico since I was born. So as an island that lays in the Caribbean, we are used to hurricanes. I mean, all our life, hurricanes are being there, and will not go away. So we must prepare and have the resiliency to deal with this natural phenomena when they occur. We met earthquakes 2 years ago. We're still dealing with that. The 100-year wave, which got a big impact on the island as well. Floodings, droughts, fires, now coastal erosion. But I think, yes, it could be changes in the climate, but those things happened before. So we're not talking about anything that is different. Just now, with more development in many areas, we are facing those issues, and they're cost much money to deal with them, like the flooding areas in the metropolitan areas. I think planification is a big issue. And how we met with those situations. I think the Army Corps of Engineers is been working in Puerto Rico, and we appreciate Congress stepping in during 2017 and the next years for allocation of funds for many of these areas. Right now, we are dealing with coastal erosion in the whole island. That's a big issue, and the Army Corps is doing a study in that regard. Hurricanes, again, we're going to be facing the hurricane season now in May, again, until November. So we're just praying not to have any strong hurricane, but we are used to storms. We're used to this. Thanks God, we don't have volcanoes in Puerto Rico, but we do have it in the Caribbean as well. So the ashes from different islands, when they got eruptions, they come all the way to the Caribbean. So I know this is happening also in California with the fires and many others. It's just how we can learn to recover fast and resilient from these experiences.
Thank you both very, very much. Congressman Simpson, any comments or questions?
No questions. I appreciate the testimony of the witnesses.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And we'll do what we can to help as we proceed forward. We want to thank our witnesses, Congressman Stanton and Congresswoman Gonzalez-Colon. Now we will go to the next two witnesses. We're doing pretty well this morning. Congressman Bill Foster of the great state of Illinois, and Congressman John Molinar from the state of Michigan.
Thank you. Am I audible and visible here?
You're not a little cloudy. I don't know for Mike Simpson. Do you see the same thing a little bit?
No.
You're visible, but not. Okay,
well, it's clear. Mostly.
Yeah, I can see him fine.
Okay. I'm just going for adequate here. Anyway, well, good afternoon, and thank you, Chairwoman Capter, Ranking Member Simpson, and the members of the subcommittee for holding this Members' Day and for allowing me to testify. I'd like to first thank you for your past support of the Department of Energy Office of Science and urge you to continue to prioritize and expand its investments in science. For decades, investments at the DOE Office of Science have resulted in important discoveries and fundamental science and emerging technologies, many of which have recently played a critical role in our nation's response to COVID-19. In recent months, we've seen bipartisan and bicameral proposals to double or even triple the R&D budgets of our country, if for no other reason to keep pace with comparable R&D investments from China. You have an opportunity to get an early start on this consensus to ramp up research funding with a strong appropriations mark for the DOE Office of Science. I'd also like to highlight the Brandon Road Lock and Dam project. The Brandon Road project is the last line of defense to prevent the spread of Asian carp and other aquatic nuisance species from getting into the Great Lakes. This project is urgent in order to prevent these nuisance species from passing freely into the Great Lakes and every tributary connected to the Great Lakes. This would be a body blow to the economies of all the states which border the Great Lakes. So I urge you to implement report language to encourage the aggressive continuation of this project. Another specific project that I'd like to bring your attention to is the Advanced Photon Source upgrade at Argonne National Lab. This facility has played a foundational role in the nation's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Researchers from across the nation have used X-rays from the APS to determine the protein structure of the viruses, which are then used to design techniques, drugs, and vaccines that fight the virus more effectively. The upgrade will enhance the capabilities of the APS, ensuring the U.S. remains at the forefront of X-ray technology and is able to respond to future national emergencies. which is why I'm requesting $101.2 million in funding for this upgrade. I would also like to express my support for $225 million for the Department of Energy's Long Baseline Neutrino Facility, the LBNF Dune project that is in Illinois and South Dakota. Neutrinos are among the most abundant and mysterious particles in the universe, and understanding that their nature may provide the key to answering some of the most fundamental questions about the nature of our universe. LBNF Dune would be the most powerful tool in the world to study these particles. And this funding is particularly important for Dune to complete its underground construction and to overcome the impacts that it's felt from international collaborators delaying their contributions due to COVID-19. So it's received sort of a double whammy from COVID-19, and full funding for this is very important. Our national laboratories, like Argonne National Lab, are also national leaders in other fields, and the work they're doing is crucial to the United States to remain a global science leader. For example, in Illinois, the Chicago Quantum Exchange is a group of researchers with a common goal of advancing the science and engineering of quantum information. Based at the University of Chicago, the Chicago Quantum Exchange is anchored by Argonne National Lab, Fermi National Accelerator Laboratory, and the University of Chicago of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Quantum information science is a revolutionary technology that will allow us to achieve groundbreaking advances in a variety of fields. Similarly, the Argonne Leadership Computing Facility, ALCF, at the Argonne National Laboratory enables breakthroughs in science and engineering by providing supercomputing resources and expertise to the research community. The ACLF will be home to one of the nation's first exascale computers when Aurora arrives in 2022. Exascale computing researchers have already shown work that models 3D printing processes with metals that could have major implications for the manufacturing sector. It is your emphasis on science funding which drives programs like these. And finally, I'd like to request your continued support for low-enriched uranium naval fuel research and development for the pressurized water reactors for propulsion of aircraft carriers and submarines. High-enriched uranium, or HEU, can be used to make nuclear weapons, whereas low-enriched uranium cannot. This makes HEU fuel vulnerable to theft by terrorists during manufacturing and transportation from civilian sites, and very dangerous for other countries to have around in large quantity because of the proliferation risk. Using LEU has the potential to reduce security costs and support naval reactor research and development at the cutting edge of nuclear science, which is why I urge you to provide an additional $20 million for naval LEU research and development. Thank you. Thank you again, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Well, good afternoon, and Chairwoman Chapter and Ranking Member Simpson and members of the committee. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to speak with you about the importance of the Army Corps of Engineers and the vital work it does for Michigan and the Great Lakes. President's budget proposes an annual budget cut of $1 billion below what Congress appropriated last year for the Army Corps. And I hope the committee will reverse that cut and fund the Army Corps at or above last year's level. The Army Corps plays a vital role in Michigan, maintaining water levels on the Great Lakes and engineering navigable waterways that are crucial to shipping, manufacturing, and the hardworking men and women who make things here in America. The Sioux Locks and the Upper Peninsula keep our country moving. The iron ore and taconite that pass through the locks is used in agriculture, steel, household products, and a whole lot more. Right now, there's only one lock that can be used by all the freighters on the Great Lakes to move iron ore from the upper Midwest to the other ports on the Great Lakes. With the support of this committee and Chairwoman Chapter, who I'm very grateful went to the Sioux Locks with me in 2019, construction has begun on a new lock. And I urge the committee to support $483 million in next year's budget for the continued construction of this new lock that will keep our country moving and support American manufacturing. The Army Corps is also working on stopping invasive species in the Great Lakes. And as Congressman Foster mentioned, the Brandon Road Lock and Dam project is necessary to prevent Asian carp from entering Lake Michigan and jeopardizing the health of the Great Lakes. Asian carp would also harm the billions of dollars and thousands of jobs in the Midwest that rely on fishing, tourism, and boating on the Great Lakes. I urge the committee to approve $5 million for this project in the coming year. Finally, I want to mention flooding that struck my hometown last year. 2 dams failed, causing destruction downstream to homes and businesses. I hope the committee will approve language I have submitted that urges the Army Corps of Engineers to participate in future flood mitigation efforts with state, local, and tribal governments, as well as business and nonprofits within the Tittabawassee River watershed. This will help prevent future disaster and help communities in my home district as they plan for the future. I hope this committee will continue to support investment in the Army Corps of Engineers and the infrastructure of our nation. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I yield back.
From the Wolverine State, and that's said by a Buckeye, so that's pretty good. I just also have to say this has been the most wonderful set of witnesses this morning, and what's going through my mind as I'm listening to all these members is the impression the public may have of Congress when they don't really see it at work. And if any American wonders about how on a bipartisan basis we can move the country forward, I invite them to take a look at this committee hearing this morning. It has just been, it's from all over the country, members from all over the country, and representatives obviously from the Gulf and Atlantic regions. In addition to that, very diverse panel on any level you want to measure it, regionally for sure, and the depth of your testimony. This is what we're about, serious business, and I just think sometimes some members of Congress get short shrift because they're actually in the boiler room doing the work, and that's the way the institution should work. So I'm proud of all of you. I just had to state that. I wanted to also move to questioning very briefly for Congressman Foster. You are well known for your work with the labs and the impact that you've had. I don't know if he's still on the line or not, but I'm hoping to be able to work with him on targeting a very organized approach to see what the labs might be able to offer to help us deal with one of the most serious health problems we have in this country, and that is an answer to mental illness. Using some of that supercomputing capacity, some of the quantum capabilities that are available, some of the light imaging that is done. But I just want to say for the record that most county jails in Ohio, upwards of 30 to 40% of their inmates have mental illness in some form, sometimes co-occurring with substance abuse, and certainly in our federal prisons. This is the wrong answer to try to help very ill people. And I haven't seen the labs come forward, to my knowledge, with anything very astounding in this arena, but I just wanted to put it on the table. And finally,
Chair Capter,
yes.
I am in fact on, and I'd just like to point out that that Argonne National Labs, the supercomputers there, were very important players in the BRAIN initiative, which are trying to make a real three-dimensional map of all of the neuron interconnections in a human brain, which will be transformative to understanding at a deep level, how the brain actually works. And the technology and the computing power necessary for that are, they're going to be a challenge, but I think one that all of the national labs working together can rise to meet.
Well, Congressman Foster, I'm going to ask your help in helping me think through how to squeeze from each of the labs something along with the brain banks that we have, and the several other members of Congress are interested in this. I'm not the only one, but to really yield more from our labs collectively across this country. We simply can't let this suffering go on unaddressed, and if we can't do better in our lifetime, shame on us. And you are one of our great leaders in this area. So I thank you for staying for the entire hearing.
Yes.
And
the laboratory work is also very important in dealing with the fundamental basis of addiction. The actual, the advanced photon source at Argonne Lab was used to directly image these molecules, very complicated molecules called G-protein coupled receptors that are when the opioid hits the brain, they are the things that get triggered, and they were able to take pictures of them in action. And so when you have a deep understanding of exactly how the addiction works at a molecular level, you have the possibility of designing treatments which reverse that effect.
Well, I think what you're saying is extremely important, and we know with dopamine and serotonin and other substances that the body has inside of it, sometimes being handled in an orderly way and sometimes in a very disorderly way. I think the labs can really help us partner with NIH, NIMH, and other places in our country, our defense research labs. I'd like to elevate this as an area of heightened inquiry for the country. So just be aware of that. And I thank you very much for responding and ask you, as well as Congressman Molinar, any evidence in your part of the United States where you see changes in the environment compared to when you were maybe in school, high school, college. What have you seen happen in your area that is worthy of note in terms of climate change?
Well, one thing I can mention, as you recall, the lake in Madison, Wisconsin would freeze hard for many months, and that is it's barely freezing at all these days.
I couldn't believe what I'm a graduate of the University of Wisconsin,
right.
And when I went back there for my reunion, I could not believe how high the lake was. And the degree of rainfall that this was about a year ago that Madison had endured. That was really a wake-up call because I hadn't been back there in quite a while. So thank you for mentioning that. And I wanted to ask Congressman Molinar if he had any comment on that point relative to Michigan.
Well, I would just say, as you know, Chairwoman Capter, the Great Lakes are at a very high level right now. They tend to be cyclical, as you know, and I can remember the first decade of the 21st century where we were very concerned about the need for dredging and just the lower levels, and we were concerned about water withdrawal, and so we ended up passing legislation to make sure there was a consistent policy on water withdrawals in the Great Lakes. So, anecdotally, I can certainly see changes and cycles, but I do think this is an area where our agriculture leaders need to be monitoring this because, as you know, different crops grow better in certain types of weather, and they're monitoring any changes as we go forward. So I think we're very fortunate, as you know, to have the Great Lakes, and we'll continue to see how that works out this year. It seems like they're down a little bit this year from where they were last year, but I guess we'll know more in the weeks and months ahead.
Thank you very much. I can guarantee you on the agriculture front, and our district is located a bit south of Congressman Molinar's, the seed packets that you buy to plant actually the climatic zones have moved one zone north. So we're actually planting Tennessee tomatoes in Ohio now. It's just interesting. So that's a change that I have noted, and I want to thank both of you for testifying. Before you shut off your video, I wanted to ask Congressman Simpson if he has any questions or comments.
No questions, but I would like to say thank you to Congressman Foster for his work on and the importance of research at our national laboratories all across the country. They are truly the research gems of this country, and I want to work with you on making sure that they have the resources to do the job we expect them to do. Secondly, Congressman Molinar, I would just say that every administration, whether it's Republican or Democrat, always comes back with a budget request for the Army Corps of Engineers that is below the level the year before. And this committee has always been very cognizant of that fact and made sure that that didn't happen. And I suspect that's going to be the case again this year. But thank you for recognizing that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman Simpson, very much. You are a bright light for the country. Now, I want to thank you and bring up the final panelists, Representative Joe Wilson. and Representative Jefferson Van Droop. Thank you both for desiring to testify this morning, and we look forward to your testimony as our hearing has gone a bit into the afternoon. Congressman Joe Wilson.
Thank you, and good afternoon. Chairwoman Marcy Kaptur and Ranking Member Mike Simpson, thank you for your determined leadership on the committee. I'm here today representing the 2nd District of South Carolina, where I am grateful that we are the home of the Savannah River site, which is so supported by our communities of South Carolina and Georgia. The Savannah River site was constructed during the 1950s to support our national defense programs for victory in the Cold War. The site maintains that responsibility 70 years later through its national laboratory, NNSA missions, and environmental cleanup. I asked the committee to consider the following for the site. 1, $30 million for the tritium finishing facility. The site is home to the Savannah River Tritium Enterprise, which prepares the nation's only tritium supply for our national defense. This new facility will replace an aged facility constructed in the 1950s that is necessary to maintain a nuclear deterrent. Second, $495 million for the Savannah River Plutonium Processing Facility and $200 million for the Savannah River Plutonium Operations. As part of a 2-site solution to plutonium pit production, this facility will provide the capability of producing no fewer than 80 plutonium pits by 2030, reinforcing again America's nuclear deterrent. Third, $115 million for the surplus plutonium disposition project. This project at the site will safely dispose of 24 metric tons of surplus plutonium through the dilute and dispose process. Fourth, $11,549,000 for the Savannah River site community and regulatory support. This request secures payment in lieu of taxes for Aiken, Barnwell, and Allendale counties, which I represent with Congressman Jim Clyburn, which provide for the vast acreage of the site. This funding request matches what's been appropriated in previous years to support the local school districts, emergency services, and county operations. Fifth, $543,784,000 for the Savannah River risk management operations. This request will allow critical missions like H Canyon at the SRS to proceed to continue processing spent nuclear fuel. These funds will also maintain operations aligned with the liquid waste life cycle program. 6, $1,046 million for the Savannah River radioactive liquid tank waste stabilization and disposition. This request includes continuation of hot operations of the salt waste processing facility, SWPF, the Defense Waste Processing Facility, as well as the continued construction of saltstone disposal units to accommodate for the increased amount of waste being processed. Seventh, and finally, $80 million for the Savannah River National Laboratory, RAD facilities. The Savannah River National Laboratory operates a suite of radiological facilities that provide for critical technical and operations support to the EM and NSA missions. Effective June 2021, the lab will become a separate management and operations contract. To cover the high cost of operating and maintaining radiological facilities, the lab overhead rate would increase significantly. By increasing a control point for the lab, it will allow the SRNL to safely operate. Thank you again for your time and your great service on the committee and in Congress for each of you. And I appreciate your consideration of these requests. I yield back.
Thank you, Congressman Wilson, very much. Where in South Carolina do you actually reside? What is the largest town, or
well,
give us a sense?
Chairwoman, I am adjacent to the city of Columbia. I represent Lexington, Aiken, the I-20 corridor. And so it's the central part of South Carolina.
The central part of South Carolina. If you had to mention a facility or college or a place that other Americans might know, what would you pick?
Well, hey, it's the University of South Carolina Gamecocks. I'm adjacent to that, okay, of course, and the real USC, okay? And then, and we're happy, hey, we're also happy to claim next door the Augusta National Golf Course. And so the Masters brings worldwide attention to the communities I represent.
All right. Well, thank you for ringing in hard for the southeastern part of our country. We appreciate your testimony today. And now we're going to move to another coastal state on the East Coast, obviously, Representative Jefferson Van Drew. Thank you so much for testifying today.
Madam Chair, thank you, and thank you for having these hearings, and as well to the ranking member. I truly appreciate it. I'm here to advocate for a long overdue and much needed Army Corps of Engineers project, the dredging of the mouth of the Morris River on the Delaware Bay shore in New Jersey. This project will generate high economic, operational, and environmental returns in a cost-effective and innovative manner. The Morris River has been federally authorized for dredging for over 1 century. Maintenance dredging should be done every 5 to 8 years, but it has been nearly 25 years since the Morris River was last serviced. As it stands, vessels must idle and wait until high tide to access the river channel. The neglect of the Morris River channel has limited the ability of local industry, mostly small businesses, to flourish and expand. It has cost them large contracts. It has also increased costs for government agencies, including the U.S. Army, the United States Coast Guard, the Army Corps, and the New Jersey State Police, which all rely on this channel. Government vessels would otherwise be serviced at Morris River, now must instead travel to Rhode Island or Virginia or other areas, which increases the time and the monetary cost of the operation to all these different agencies. The proposed dredging will open the channel to larger vessels and more frequent navigation, which is we want. And it will increase the capacity for commerce across the mid-Atlantic, facilitating interstate commerce by keeping the nation's waterways open and safe is one of the Army Corps' original and most vital missions. This project has outstanding community support. It has received letters of support from the surrounding municipalities, the county, the state legislative delegation, and the entire local business community. The local and regional community is totally united in support for this project. Most notably, this project has received a very rare letter of capability from the Army Corps of Engineers, which I have submitted to the committee. The Army Corps has an innovative beneficial use plan to execute this project in a cost-effective manner and amplify the benefits of the project and utilize the dredge spoils for environmental resilience, which is what's so wonderful about this particular project. This project is funded. If funded, will open a new world of opportunity for the Delaware Bayshore community. This is a community that is near and dear to my heart, and sadly, one that is too often left behind. We can truly make a positive impact on this community. I urge you to grant this request for $4,010,000 in community project funding to the Army Corps of Engineers in the Philadelphia district, and to conduct this literally one-of-a-kind project. Thank you so much for your time, and I yield back.
Thank you, Congressman Van Drew. And you are our last panel, but I did want to comment to both of you that, and our able ranking member earlier stated, generally administrations submit a budget to us and underfund the Corps because they know how popular the Corps is and Congress will fix it. Well, shame on them. We have tens of billions of dollars of backlog Corps projects all over the country. The most important infrastructure bill we could write would put those projects up at the top of the list because the Corps could move them. They are restrained somewhat internally by not having enough staff to process, but nonetheless, you know, when we're serious about something, America can get it done. So I view their unmet backlog as one of our key elements for the upcoming infrastructure bill, and I hope we can get it done. I'm very happy to hear your emphasis, Congressman Van Drew, on environmental restoration. And one of our challenges with the Corps, and I couldn't figure out why it's been so slow for them to do environmental restoration, and I asked them for a list of which engineers they hire and how many are civil engineers, environmental engineers. They have almost no environmental engineers. So when you talk about reuse and recovery of material, it isn't that they're not talented, they're very talented. They just don't think in that category. They don't have the staff to do it. And so it's a problem for us all over the country. I wanted to...
Madam Chairman, yes. This would be a brave new start, because this is something that would help the environment, the wetlands and so forth in the area, and at the same time reduce costs, which usually doesn't always go together. So we're really proud of this project, and it has tremendous potential. And again, as I said before, the Army Corps is on the same page with this. It's one of those rare projects, which, as you know, doesn't happen that often, where environmentalists are happy, where the Corps is happy, where all these other agencies are happy as well. So it's not the largest price tag project in the world for sure, but it's a very, very important one to people whose safety and literally their way of life depends upon it.
I wanted to ask Congressman Wilson and yourself, in terms of what's happening to our environment. You both are coastal representatives. You're further north, obviously, but New Jersey's coast has been battered. Obviously, South Carolina, Florida, North Carolina, Louisiana. I mean, I wondered if you could reflect on what you've seen happening in your regions compared to maybe 40 years ago when you were in school or starting your careers. Do you have any comments you could make to us on changes that you've seen in the ecosystem in your areas?
It certainly does seem a little bit warmer, and that's something that I think anecdotally a lot of people feel. Interesting enough, we have a tremendous amount of fishing. The port of Cape May, if you're familiar with Cape May, is in the top 5 on the whole East Coast. And the fishing, the type of fish that they are catching, the type of fish that they're seeing is a little bit different because of the change of the temperature of the water. So that also has been a very interesting change. And we had Superstorm Sandy, which was a huge storm, but at the same time, you know, we've had storms like that before, unfortunately, or almost like that. We don't have them nearly as regularly as, say, Puerto Rico or even the Carolinas would, but we do. So we don't know what the cause of that particular thing is. And I would say this one thing, as we go forward, and I was glad to hear we were talking about, I always see this as a basket of ideas. So I believe that wind has a use. I believe that solar has a use. Fossil fuels are still going to be there for a while. I believe that nuclear could have a use without question. One of the issues that's a real challenge for the coast of New Jersey and our area is there are a great number of wind turbines that are slated to go up. And it's creating a real difference of opinion between commercial fishermen and recreational fishermen and the people who want to do the windmills, because it's going to profoundly, they're 1,000 feet high. And on top of that 1,000 feet, they have a light. So they're as high as the Statue of Liberty. And so people do worry about the birds, literally the birds, the bees, and the bats. And people are also worried about, we don't want to replace one industry for another, that there be enough room for navigation for the commercial fishing boats and the recreational fishing boats, because in Europe, where they do have these wind turbines to a much greater degree, they don't have fishing other than in the UK right around them. So they're worried about the cold pool. The cold pool is a very rich area, abundant area, environmentally, species-wise, and for the fishermen as well. They're worried about the floor, literally the floor of the ocean. So I think as we go through with this, we all have to have open minds and see what the best is to do in a particular situation. This isn't going to be one easy, quick answer in my mind, that it's just going to be wind, or it's just going to be solar, or it's just going to be nuclear, or it's just going to be certainly, you know, a mixture, I think. And I just wanted to put that in because it's quite a thing that we're going through right now.
Thank you very much for those comments. Congressman Wilson.
Chairwoman, first of all, I want to thank you for your tribute to the Corps of Engineers. My youngest son is a graduate of Fort Leonard Wood as an engineer and served for a year in Afghanistan. And so I'm really grateful for his service. And then Indeed, as I actually represent the interior part of South Carolina, but we obviously, I grew up in the very historic holy city of Charleston, South Carolina. And so every year, Chairwoman, we would have the threat of a hurricane coming straight toward us. And then, fortunately, only one time, 1959, with Hurricane Gracie, did it actually hit Charleston. But due to the Gulf Stream, it normally directs a hurricane, and I don't want to hurt the feelings of people of the Outer Banks of North Carolina, but it directs it straight to the Outer Banks of North Carolina like a catcher's mitt. And so we've been very fortunate. We did have in 1989 Hurricane Hugo, but the hurricanes, fortunately, along our coast, sadly, for our adjacent states, go north, like Hurricane Sandy to New Jersey, where Congressman Van Drew found out the consequence. But bottom line, we have a temperate climate, and so that's why South Carolina is one of the fastest growing states in the United States.
Very interesting. Well, thank you both. Congressman Simpson, would you like to ask any questions or make final comments?
No questions. Thank you both for testifying. I always look forward to working with Joe on the issues dealing with the nuclear facility in South Carolina and how we get this dilute and dispose moving forward, and where we're going to dispose after we dilute. That's always that's the challenge right now. So I look forward to working with you on that to try to solve these problems. But thank you both for testifying and being here today.
Thank you. And for the record, I would just say, following Congressman Simpson's comments, that we are looking very seriously at interim storage of spent nuclear waste, and we are trying to figure out a way to get that moving for the sake of the nation. So all ideas on that front, welcome. I want to thank Congressman and Ranking Member Simpson for his steadfast engagement, and this concludes today's hearing, but I'd like to thank all of our colleagues for joining us today. I think this was a great hearing, learning from our members and hearing their ideas and their experiences. Members who would like to submit written testimony have until the close of business today to provide this information to the subcommittee office, and this hearing is adjourned with thanks to all.
Thank you.
Thank you.